Does Texas A&M have what it takes to take down Bama and the rest of the SEC Western Division? We break down the Texas A&M roster with Andrew Hattersley from Gig'em 247 Sports. You know the name brand. You know what they deliver right there. So please join Andrew over there on Gig'em 247. Andrew, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Fall camp is right around the corner, so got some nice rest and relaxation here as that month of June kind of came to an end. So that's been nice, and now just ready again for fall camp to get here and the dead period to be gone again.
Texas A&M fans and college football fans in general are kind of hanging on to that spring game as the one slice of Zach Calzada and Haynes King that they could kind of gather as being a sample of what these skill sets are for each quarterback. So as we head toward August, which is going to be that final run through, we actually don't know what's going through Jimbo Fisher's mind in regards to who necessarily has the upper hand. But how do you see it in regards to the odds of who wins this job and how it's going to play out in August?
Yeah, so I still think the slight edge goes probably to Haynes King, just from everything we've heard. I think if you were to put him as kind of 1A, 1B going into camp, it would be King and then Calzada. But really what it's going to come down to during fall camp is who takes care of the ball better, because that's something I've had a couple conversations with folks this week already, and I think that's just kind of the general consensus of whoever's going to win the job is the guy that makes the least mistakes, not necessarily big plays down the field, or that would certainly be nice, but just who is able to protect the ball, make good decisions. And right now, if you were to go with a guy who maybe makes better decisions, Haynes King would probably be that guy that protects the ball a little better. The ball comes out of Zach Calzada's hands, and that really, really, really well. And that's what's really got him in the race. But his decision-making has to get better. It has to improve a little bit. We talked about the spring game. He threw an interception right before halftime, which is kind of that mistake when you think about Jimbo Fisher. Those are the ones he wants to avoid.
Yeah, and when you look at the situation going into the actual games in September, you obviously want to be sure about the guy that you chose, because you don't want to have a quick trigger, and if he gets into some trouble in a key game early, yank him, and then if the second guy comes in and doesn't get the job done, and then you're in this quandary of, okay, going back and forth, who's the hot hand this week. You want to stay far away from that kind of situation where there's this battle ensuing from week to week and the team doesn't know who the leader is and who the guy's going to be each and every week. So, but it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, you don't want any guy looking over his shoulder. So, I mean, I think just the expectation is, and one of the things that Jimbo Fisher has said, that when he looks at the quarterback battle, he wants it to become obvious on the practice field. So he's going to let he's in no hurry to make any sort of a decision. He wasn't after the spring game. He's really just going to let it play out and see over the 28, over the month before the season starts, who really grabs hold of the job. And honestly, they play kind of an easier schedule to start. So I don't think it's out of the question that you could see him play both quarterbacks in the first week and see how they manage another game situation, and then make a decision after that once they start getting into, Colorado and going on the road. I think that's when you really want to have it solidified, when you go on the road to Colorado. I know they're coming off kind of an up and down year, but I don't think you want to go on the road still not having figured out who your quarterback's going to be.
Yeah, there's no question that Texas A&M has loads of talent in comparison to Colorado. But again, it's a road game, out of conference, unfamiliar opponent. Mm-hmm. We saw what happened when the offense was off kilter early against Vandy, a team that Texas A&M is so much better than. But it can become kind of tricky when you're tossing out 3 and outs all over the place and you get into a one-score game, and you don't want to leave it out there for chance of a tipped pass or a blocked punt or something crazy happening with 5 minutes left in the game, and all of a sudden you're in a struggle with a team that you should be blowing out. So yeah, this is going to be fascinating. King versus Calzada. And then we basically move into the offensive line, I think, Andrew, because if you look at the entire team, playmakers all over the place on offense, sure things at running back, wide receiver to the most part, but certainly Isaiah Spiller. And then on defense, rock solid despite a couple key losses. So it's quarterback and offensive line. Jimbo Fisher, and even going back to Kevin Sumlin, had built some of the better offensive lines in college football for a number of years. But with 3 starters lost, the move with Kenyon Green, just maybe some uncertainty that's going to tie into the quarterback comfort back there in the pocket.
Yeah, when this actually goes back to another point that Jimbo Fisher made after the spring game, was somebody asked him about quarterbacks, and he said, "Listen," he said, "I'm not worried about the quarterbacks. I'm worried about everything around the quarterbacks. You know, whether it be offensive line, whether it be receiver." When you look at the offensive line, I think that is a big question mark. And you know, you mentioned Kenyon Green; he's going to be making the move out to left tackle. And I think that move will be. I don't think he's one to worry about. It might take him a game or two to settle in, just the adjustments and playing a new position. But I think ultimately he'll be fine. Really interested to see what Akinola Akunbi does. He's a guy that, you know, when I went down for the camp last month, he looks in phenomenal shape and looks really, really, really good with a year now of strength and conditioning, and his body just looks ready to kind of step in. So he's a guy I know kind of in that fighting for one of those guard positions. Layden Robinson's another guy that has been on campus now for a little bit, and he impressed when he got some action last year, late in the year. And so I think he's another guy that when you start looking at how this offensive line is going to come together, those 2 guys are key. And then obviously Jameer Johnson. They brought him in from Tennessee last year. The big thing I think with him, and I know there's probably a question about how, you know, how is he going to look? You know, how is he going to fit into the offense? But he comes in with a lot of SEC experience, and I think that's really valuable when you consider, you know, losing 4 guys on the offensive line from last year. You wanted just a guy that knows how to play in the league, has faced those sorts of defenders before, and can at least provide some stability at the offensive line. And then Luke Matthews, I think the key with him really, you know, he's kind of the guy that they're looking at center, but he's just got to stay healthy. I think that's the biggest question with him. He's battled some injuries. And if you look at those 5 guys along the offensive line, I think, you know, you could mix in Bryce Foster, looks ready to go already, but, you know, you'd love to give him a chance to maybe, you know, get some time to settle in and get into a strength and conditioning program. But the offensive line, really, they've just got to find 5 guys that can click together, and that'll be the biggest thing during fall camp and one of the biggest question marks on the offensive side.
So, Andrew, with the classes coming in under Jimbo Fisher being as strong as they are, do you anticipate anybody from the 21 class being any kind of a factor along the offensive front, even if they don't get a start, that they could be an impact second-level person?
I think Bryce Foster is probably the one. I think looking at I know Jordan Moko looks kind of the part, just from a body standpoint. I mean, I saw him at the camp too, and he looks like he could step out there right away. But he's still adjusting to the game of football, and so I think patience is going to be required with him. I think that's a lot to ask from, you know, basically coming over from Australia and immediately stepping in and being asked to contribute. Maybe later in the year once he starts to kind of pick up those sorts of things. From a body standpoint, I mean, he looks ready to go. And, you know, if we talk about, you know, the first guy you want stepping off the bus when you go on a place, Jordan Moko seems like the type of guy that you want stepping off right away. Bryce Foster is probably the other one. I think Ruben Fothery probably needs a year to redshirt. He's got great size at 6'8", but I think he needs to strengthen the lower half of his body a little bit. I think Matthew Wyckoff also needs, you know, a year in a strength and conditioning program, and just to, you know, pick up some things. And I would say the same for Remington Strickland. So Bryce Foster is really the one that if you look at it like a guard or maybe backup center, he plays all over the line. So he's a guy I could see factoring in maybe in like that 6-7 spot that when if an injury happens and you need him to go in because he is just we know Jimbo Fisher loves to run the ball and Bryce Foster is just a mauler is the way I would probably describe it. I mean he physically is ready to go.
Foster, the number 5 rated offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman out of this last class, top 65 player in the country, according to the 247 Sports Composite. And you look at Foster, you look at Fatherly, 2 more of those prospects coming out of that Katy, Richmond, Texas area that provides a ton of talent for Texas A&M.
Really huge offensive line class when you consider, I mean, they're having to replace a lot from last year, and those are 2 guys when you start looking 3-4 years down the road in the future. I mean, those were just super important lands, especially last class when, you're kind of trying to remake the offensive line.
Got Andrew Hattersley on the line from Gig'em 247 to break down the Texas A&M offense for us. And I guess it all starts and stops with Isaiah Spiller. Of course, he's going to carry the load out of the backfield, and all you have to do is pull up any kind of top 10, top 25 list of running backs in the nation, and he's going to be up near that top of the list. I had him in the top 3 or 4 in the nation myself, and coming off 1,000 yards despite the shortened season with 9 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, the offense is going to start and stop with him this year. I think they're going to rely on him heavily again. He's got great vision. He's got great body control. And, with a young quarterback, I think he provides an incredible security blanket. He's great pass protector as well, and just is a really, really solid guy to have in the backfield. And I think the good news for him this year is he's going to have help too with Devon Achane, who kind of came on the second half of last year. And if there was a concern with Isaiah Spiller, it was just keeping him healthy because they had to rely on him so much that towards the end of the year he had kind of an ankle injury. He played on a really bad toe for the last part of the year, and still incredible what he was able to do playing on a bad toe. But this year, Devon Achane should be there as kind of that second option, and he's really explosive as well. I mean, he's got a chance to be a breakout guy this year and really put himself on the map as well. He did in the Orange Bowl. And then you've still got Aniyah Smith there. You've still got LJ Johnson, who's coming in as a freshman who might be able to contribute. And then you've got, you've got Ernest Crownover, and you've got Darvin Hubbard, and you've got DeAndre Jackson, who are, that kind of gives you 6-7 running backs who you can reliably depend upon.
Yeah, as Shane only had 43 carries last year, but as you mentioned, home run hitting ability, 8.5 yards per carry. He scored 5 touchdowns with limited touches, just 48 touches between pass receiving and carries out of the backfield. Aniyah Smith is an interesting guy that they like to do different things with. So he's like split running back, split wide receiver.
Put him at fullback a little bit too last year, and so I mean they really did a little bit of everything with him. And I think if they can, I know we're gonna get to the receiver position in a little bit, but if you can kind of solidify that group with Achane and Isaiah Spiller, that gives you a little bit of freedom to maybe move I know Smith around at the receiver spot, but I still think you'll see him in the backfield because he's just such a weapon to have coming out of the backfield, and the more ways you can get the ball in his hand, the better. And he's got a home run hitting ability of his own, and I don't think it'll be a lot of plays, but I think you could see him and Isaiah Spiller in the backfield together last year was such like a powerful combination. And even if they've tried to, I asked Jimbo Fisher about putting Achane, Spiller, and Smith in the backfield together, and he kind of joked and said he may use it in the future, but that would be an interesting combo as well. But even if you put Smith and Achane together and you give Spiller a break, really there's a lot of ways that you can use him.
You could probably win a bet with somebody asking them who led the team in touchdowns, because it wasn't Isaiah Spiller. It was actually Smith with 10 between rushing and receiving. There's a guy here as we move to the receivers, Andrew, that every time I watch Texas A&M, which is about half the games, seems to be making plays. I would expect his numbers to be bigger than 29 catches last year and 2 touchdowns, but it seems like Chase Lane, when I'm watching, is always making plays. You got Hezekiah Jones, of course, with 18 catches. Not a ton of experience coming back at wide receiver.
Yeah, I agree with you a little bit on Chase Lane. I think he wasn't necessarily like a home run hitting threat, but he seemed to be that guy on third downs and whenever they needed a key down, it was kind of Chase Lane that came up with the big play. And I'm really interested to see what happens with the receiving group this year, because just looking at basically this time last year, the receiver room was kind of had to adjust on the fly because I think they went into the year thinking that Jamon Osborne was going to be able to contribute, and he ended up opting out for the year. And you lost Cam Brown, you lost some other guys, and so I think guys like Chase Lane were asked to step up, and didn't necessarily have the experience in that room that now you have this year. Everybody for the most part is back for another year, and I think Chase Lane is a guy that could kind of build on last year a little bit. And you're right though, he did every time he seemed to make a big play after big play. And having Hezekiah Jones back the second half of the year is kind of that veteran presence and guy that could also move the chains. That's what they're looking for, and that's really what Jimbo Fisher's looking for in terms of reliability and guys that are going to be in the right spot at the right time and contribute in the running game.
And when you need 3, 4, and even 5 guys deep at wide receiver, because of obviously typically playing 3 guys and then going to 4 and 5 wide receiver sets, and needing that many players to step up.
Caleb Chapman was a guy that caught a 50-yard touchdown against Florida. And I think he was really in for a big year before he tore his ACL. That was really a shame. That seemed to be a breakout game for him. And, getting him back healthy, when you talk about giving a boost to that wide receiver room, I think he would be a huge guy to have to go along with Hezekiah Jones and Chase Lane. And I think everything sounds good in terms of his recovery and being ready to go this year. And then you look at a guy, the guy I think A&M fans are clamoring to get on the field is Damon Demas. And he looks really strong, really, he looks like he's made some strides in the weight room. And I think there's a lot of anticipation that he's now going to be ready to contribute. You got Jalen Preston too. So I still think that receiver room's in a good spot.
And of course, you got a tight end who's going to produce like a wide receiver in terms of numbers, who's probably the best guy in the country. There's an argument there, but certainly with Kyle Pitts moving on, he's right near the top of the list as being that kind of a talent. And of course, he was out for the spring, but everything should be good coming off 46 catches last year. Of course, talking about Jalen Weidemeyer, I should mention his name for people that don't follow Texas A&M football, but he's a beast.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. And, they did keep him out of the spring game. I think he had a slight cut on his hand that required a little bit of surgery. And so, in terms of list of concerns for A&M during the spring, Jalen Weidemeyer certainly was not on there. So they're really, really excited about what he might be able to bring this year. I think, he's going to be one of the top players in the country at that position. And, I spoke with somebody about that just a couple of weeks ago. Actually, when you look at A&M was one of the best teams in the country on third down last year, and a big reason for that was Jalen Weidemeyer because of just what he's able to do. He provides a big target on third down, and he made some really tough catches and contested catches. And that's just a guy when you're kind of in a pinch, you're in that 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. He's just such a weapon to have out on the field because of his size and athleticism and ability to run different routes. And, they can kind of get him the ball in different ways, whether it's short little dump offs or, routes over the middle, and he's gotten better as a run blocker too. I think that went a little bit under the radar last year, but he is, between him and Isaiah Spiller, those are probably your two guys you're looking at as the biggest keys to the A&M offense this year outside of the quarterback position.
Folks, we are tearing it up when it comes to roster previews across the nation, schedule previews, everything we do with call-in shows and live streams featuring all sorts of teams across the country. So please give us a like, share the videos out on social media, because if you're here enjoying the content, others will as well. So share it with your other Texas A&M friends, and also just college football folks in general. We got Andrew Hattersley on the line breaking down the Texas A&M offense. He's from Gig'em 247 Sports, joins us on a regular basis. So join him on Gig'em 247 and everything he's got available right there. Andrew, we appreciate you stopping by.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.